The Infinity Stones are among the most powerful objects in the MCU, but as far as the Mind Stone goes, its abilities are almost kind of limited. Like how in the first Avengers movie, Loki actually has to touch somebody with the scepter to control their mind, and that's why it doesn't work on Tony because it just hits the arc reactor.
Not a great plan.
And sure, maybe that's a problem with the scepter specifically, that it can't harness the Mind Stone in that way, but even when we see Vision created, it's not like he ever blasts somebody with the stone and then controls their mind. That would have been awesome. And yes, part of this is because the first battle that Vision takes place in is against Ultron, and even if he were to control any part of Ultron's army, it would still have to be totally destroyed, and you can't have the risk of Ultron then being able to take over the Vision as well. But even after that, like when we look at Civil War, wouldn't it have made a lot more sense for him to just blast Cap's team and then say, let's stop the fighting and just talk this out instead of having the battle at the airport? I mean, it's unethical, of course, but I'm pretty sure Rhodey would agree with it.
This is awkward.
And even if Vision doesn't do that in Civil War just because he's choosing not to because of the ethics behind it, are you really telling me he wouldn't do everything possible to stop Thanos in Infinity War? I mean, you're weighing control in one mind against half of the universe existing. Even if you don't trade lives, that's a pretty easy deal. But before we dive into the secret of the Mind Stone, let's give it a little more background because Hydra was also in possession of the stone for a little while after the first Avengers movie, and they used it to give superpowers to Pietro and Wanda Maximoff, aka Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. Which, yeah, of course, it's not the only Infinity Stone that gives somebody superpowers, as Captain Marvel gets hers from the Space Stone, along with the Asgardians most likely getting their abilities from the Reality and Soul Stones, which subscribe if you want to see how Odin created the Asgardian Empire with the Infinity Stones as they dominated the Nine Realms, and if this video hits 10 likes, I'll move that up in the rotation too. And the Mind Stone isn't the only Infinity Stone with unclear powers, as we never really get to see what the wisdom of the Soul Stone is that Red Skull tells us about. And even then, the only time we see the Soul Stone used is when Thanos is fighting Doctor Strange in a real blink and you miss it moment, as you have the infinite amount of Stranges, and he uses the Soul Stone to identify which Strange is the real one. And I bring this up because after he gets the Soul Stone, Thanos is a lot more empathetic as a character, which, yeah, part of that is because he just killed Gamora, and in his messed up sociopathic mind, he did love her. And then you add on the fact that all of his children, except for Nebula, are dead, and it's hard to say if empathy is the right word when it comes to Thanos, or sympathy, or whatever it is in this case, but there is a definite separation between pre-Soulstone Thanos and post-Soulstone Thanos.
I don't even know who you are.
And while I'm still on Thanos, has anybody else ever wondered how he's immediately able to know how to use each Infinity Stone perfectly? Sure, maybe it's a little bit intuitive, but just as an example, when we're first introduced to the Power Stone in Guardians of the Galaxy, all Ronan has to do is touch Xandar with it, and he'll be able to destroy the whole planet. Yet, when Thanos uses the Power Stone, he doesn't kill anybody, not even by accident. To me, this is a pretty obvious answer because we're introduced to the Mind Stone through the Scepter in the first Avengers movie, as Loki has received it from Thanos, so we know that Thanos possessed it for a time before the Avengers came together. So it makes sense that the Mind Stone would give him the answers and the knowledge to be able to know how to use all of the Infinity Stones, but what if that's not all that it showed him? When he gives his backstory to Doctor Strange on Titan, he tells him about how the planet had too many mouths to feed and not enough resources, and that he gave the suggestion to just kill half the planet. But how did he come to this conclusion? I think it makes sense that he wanted to save Titan and then decides to go after the Mind Stone, as it would give him the knowledge he would need to give them the better life. And the answer the Mind Stone gives him is genocide. At random, just rich and poor alike. It doesn't matter who dies, just that half the planet dies. And of course, people think Thanos is crazy, so when his planet does die out, he believes that he could have saved them, and it's just this terrible curse that he has as he knows how to save them. He believes he got the answer when he sought out the Mind Stone, which was his goal all along, but the Mind Stone didn't give him the best answer. It gave him the answer that it wanted. So it would corrupt him to want to commit genocide.
You're not the only one cursed with knowledge.
Thanos' logic, and man, I am using that word so loosely, but it's cold and calculating. It would obviously never work, but when somebody's afraid and their planet is dying out, it can seem like a quick, immediate fix, the kind of drastic action that would be needed on a planet that would otherwise die soon. So he gets this idea, he believes it will work because it comes from the Mind Stone, and then he clings to it even more after his planet dies out because they refuse to listen to him. And this is where Thanos really becomes the Mad Titan, as he just descends into insanity, as he commits genocide at random on all these different planets, thinking he's saving them from suffering the fate that his own homeworld did. And as his morals are obviously just completely gone, if you're willing to commit genocide, then what's abducting children? In his mind, he's not only saving them from their planet dying, but from the correction that it needs also, because in his insanity, he thinks he's being altruistic. And if I'm saying that it's at least partially because of the Mind Stone, then there have to be other examples in the MCU of characters being at their most evil when they're in possession of that stone. And I think the best place to start with that is with somebody who's burdened with glorious purpose.
I have been falling for 30 minutes!
Yes, Loki is definitely at his most evil in the first Avengers movie when he's in possession of the scepter, as he just wants to rule the planet as a benevolent god and doesn't care who he has to kill to rule, just that he gets to fulfill his need for glorious purpose. And Morbius even calls him out on it in the first season of the Loki TV show. He's having fun doing these things. And after his failure to take over Earth, it really doesn't take much for Loki to fight for good. Whether you're looking at the Sacred Timeline or the Loki TV show, it's a pretty quick transition, as he's immediately willing to help Thor fight against the Dark Elves in Thor the Dark World, and then in the TV show, obviously there's more character growth for it, but he sets himself on a path that ends with him being the protector of the timelines. And then there's Ultron, who is designed to create peace in our time, but as soon as Tony and Bruce use the Mind Stone to program it, all of a sudden it's thinking that the only way to protect life is to try to destroy it, to force evolution by genocide, and not picking and choosing who gets to live in this new world. It's still random, and that sounds a little familiar, actually.
I like you.
Yes, this is almost exactly how it would have happened with Thanos on Titan. Again, Ultron's goal is peace in our time, and then you have the Mind Stone telling him that, hey, the way to get peace in our time is for the people to evolve, and the only way you can make them evolve is if you try to kill them all. So again, you have two different situations where the Mind Stone is in contact with one of our villains, and the answer apparently for the villain is genocide. So it can't just be a coincidence, because it's not what Tony and Bruce are trying to program Ultron to do. It's not what Jarvis is going to want it to do. So it has to be coming from somewhere in Ultron's programming, and really the only place would be the Mind Stone. And it even makes more sense when Tony's reaction to Ultron turning against them is to defend the need for Ultron. That he is just like Thanos. They're two sides of the same coin. He's also cursed with knowledge, and he knows that there is alien life out there. That's the end game, and the only way that they can prepare for it is if they're willing to give up some of their freedoms for security. So, again, that's pretty similar to what Thanos is arguing. It's not obviously genocide, and I don't think Tony would ever bring that up or even think that. But at the same time, he's willing to give up a lot in the name of security, just like Thanos was. But I'm sure you're thinking about Vision again now, because after all this, Tony goes on to create an artificial being along with Bruce, Jarvis, Ultron, and even Thor, really, that is capable of using the Mind Stone. So why is Vision never corrupted then by its power?
We need to go.
Yes, Vision is worthy of the power of Thor, and that's why he's able to use the Mind Stone without it corrupting him. It's why Thor finishes the building of Vision and trusts him with the stone after they defeat Ultron. And this is something Captain America is against, by the way. Steve Rogers, who's usually on the right side of things, but Vision is able to fight against this power because deep down he just wants to protect life. He doesn't even want to destroy Ultron. He just acknowledges that he's too big of a threat to be left alive, and that's why he'll fight against him. But the Mind Stone, it uses logic in such a pure form that if you aren't prepared to be able to fight against that, you're going to be against the side of humanity. It's honestly a story we see a lot of times in fiction, just as AI is trying to use its logic to correct things, and humanity, because of its nature, isn't able to be corrected, so it has to be destroyed. You know, Skynet, HAL 9000, Agent Smith, these are the villains in these stories, and what they try to do is destroy humanity because they can't use their logic to understand it, and therefore it doesn't fit in how they see the world.
Why, Mr. Anderson? Why? Why do you persist?
And the Mind Stone would be the one Infinity Stone that would most likely see the creation of life as a mistake, and then be able to figure out a plan to use the other stones to then try to correct that mistake. Heck, it may have even wanted to have been found by Thanos, especially if it had been possessed by Odin along with the other stones, and then he has a change of heart as he wants to protect life instead of just conquer it. Even Hela revealing how Odin came to rule over the Nine Realms in Thor Ragnarok shows that even someone as powerful and moral as the All-Father can be corrupted by the Mind Stone, and it's his spell that shows that Vision is worthy of being able to possess it and wield it, you know? It really makes me hope that Odin did have all the Infinity Stones at one point, just for the delicious irony of that alone. But now I want to shift the question to you guys. Do you think that the Mind Stone corrupts whoever possesses it, or am I just giving the villains too much credit here? And do you think that Odin possessed all the Infinity Stones at some point? You know, let me know about that too. Again, we hit 10 likes on this video, I'll move that up in the rotation, but subscribe if you don't want to miss that. I'm definitely still going to make that video, but that's all I got for you guys today. So if you enjoyed, drop a like, subscribe if you want more like this, and I'll see you next time on STV.